You know, it is a story that most of us have heard before. The insufficient bridges on U.S. Highway 80 going out to Tybee Island desperately need to be replaced because they can no longer accommodate all of the tourism traffic. Those bridges are constantly shut down for wrecks and during severe weather events, isolating everyone on the island and their ability to access emergency care.
But the story that is yet to be told, so far anyway, is why are those bridges slated to be rebuilt all the way into 2026 when the safety threat is right now? Our Elizabeth Rollins has been investigating this project for months and found out it's been buried by what appears to be a lot of red tape.
When we started to follow the money in the project timeline to replace these bridges, we quickly realized that this project may be among many projects around the state that's become a victim of flawed practices and protocols within the Georgia Department of Transportation. Tybee Island welcomes more than 1 million visitors a year, filing in one by one along U.S. Highway 80. It's the only way on and off the island, and during the busy season, the very narrow Bull River and Lazaretto Creek bridges on this 5-mile stretch become a recipe for disaster. Saturday, July 22nd, 2017 was one of those days.
Channel 911, where is your emergency? There's been an accident on the bridge going towards Tybee.
In 2012, the Georgia Department of Transportation, or GDOT, acknowledged the bridges needed to be replaced because both have narrow shoulders and no emergency lanes. The Lazaretto also has structural issues. It scored a 41 out of 100. The Bull River scored a 61. Anything below a 50 can be prioritized on GDOT's list to be replaced sooner rather than later. But instead, GDOT put the $105 million project on its long-range list, which means construction would not start until at least 2026, 14 years after its priority listing. And since 2012, there have been more than 50 wrecks on just the two bridges alone. 87% of those occurred on either a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, usually shutting down the bridges and highway because there are no emergency lanes, which means police and EMS can't respond to other emergencies on the island.
Yeah, I told dispatch it was completely shut down.
While first responders were busy with this July 22nd accident, Tybee visitor Karen Parker became one of these indirect victims when she started having a seizure on the beach.
They kept calling 911. They said that there was a bad wreck on the road coming in, and the road was blocked.
She needed an ambulance, but her only option was to be life-flighted. Parker considers herself lucky after spending time in intensive care and making a full recovery.
That could have been a little child. It could have been so much worse.
This federal highway is only eligible for federal funding, which means there is no say at the local level. Once Georgia receives its federal share, it's all up to GDOT to decide which federal projects can wait and which ones are funded next. And Tybee Island Mayor Jason Buelterman has been pushing GDOT to expedite this project for years.
That's frustrating because what we were told just a few years ago was that construction could start 2018, 2019, or 2020.
GDOT decides on a timeline after they score and select projects using a performance-based criteria, overall goals, and stakeholder feedback. But in Georgia, that information is not readily available to the public, unlike DOTs in states like North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia that publicly list project scores and explain why some projects rank higher than others. So we filed an open records request to find out how the U.S. Highway 80 bridge replacement project scored and where it ranks on GDOT's list. But that request is still outstanding. In our investigation, we came across this audit. It was conducted by the state of Georgia. It claims that there's a lack of transparency within the planning division. So we came here to Atlanta to talk to GDOT officials at their headquarters. We attended one of the state transportation board meetings, hoping to speak with the planning director because the audit calls out the planning division, saying, quote, projects go through an informal review process. Problems exist with documentation and transparency. The planning division lacks initial selection criteria. It lacks detailed policies and procedures, and decisions are not well documented. The planning director was unavailable after the meeting, so we went to the commissioner. I came across an audit that says you guys, aren't being transparent about the prioritizing process.
I certainly understand that audit and its findings, but I'd certainly disagree that we do and are very transparent, the most transparent that we've ever been.
But we still question their transparency because we still don't have their prioritization list or information about how projects are scored. We did find that nearly a dozen federal projects in the Savannah area are slated to be funded and completed ahead of the bridge replacement project, and they all directly benefit the Port of Savannah. That's nearly $530 million federal dollars that GDOT will spend over the next 5 years before ever spending a dime on reconstructing the bridges. This includes the widening of I-16 between I-95 and 516. This $157 million project was identified in 2016, 4 years after the bridge project. Construction will begin in 2018, and it will be completed before the bridge construction ever begins. In 2013, GDOT even delayed a local project to benefit a port-related project. In an internal email, a GDOT official says, quote, "Yep, the locals don't have the money, and this is an extremely high-profile project serving the port. We got to deliver it." In a statement to WTOC, the planning director said this GDOT employee was, quote, "correct in stating the importance of the delivery of a certain project, including but not limited to the fact that Georgia enjoys the status of being the #1 place for business, and freight mobility plays a role in the rating." But that contradicts his statement on the bridge project, saying, quote, "safety is their #1 priority." He also said the project wasn't being pushed back, but rather, quote, had already been accelerated from long range or no identified date to 2026. But according to our WTOC records and Mayor Jason Buelterman, that's not true.
What I have been told, again, is that this project is set to be constructed 2019 timeframe, give or take a year.
I'm going to tell you right now, I looked it up. It says right now on the website 2026.
Yep.
But there's no way to track and verify original dates on GDOT's website because according to this audit, all changes in project status are also not clearly documented. As a result, it's difficult to determine the extent to which projects have been delayed or advanced or the reasons for changes.
This has been the single most frustrating thing that I've ever dealt with. It's because it's hard to get answers. It's hard to find out when these things are actually going to happen.
And the frustration for Karen Parker amounts to a $14,000 bill she received for being life flighted, more than 14 times the average cost of an ambulance ride.
They say I should have taken an ambulance. I said, well, I would have if there wouldn't have been cars in the middle of the road wrecked.
And the safety threat is overwhelming as long as this remains on GDOT's long-term list.
That's very unfortunate. This is about safety. This is about people's lives.
Are y'all assuming the liability of what could happen to those lives on Tybee if something shuts it down?
Well, listen, people have to be accountable, and safety is #1 for us. We take that very seriously. We're very much focused on making sure that people are safe. We've made safety improvements.
And while improvements like the restriping of the Bull River Bridge have been made, the commissioner and planning director are also yielding to the thousands of drivers on the road, saying, quote, "We cannot overstate the importance of driver behavior in reducing these crashes." It's an expensive project, but waiting nearly 10 years also comes with a hefty price tag because there will always be someone bearing the cost of these dangerous bridges.
Why? Why is it not being done? If you don't want to put the money into the road, give me the $14,000 to pay for that bill.
Now, again, this project cannot be funded with local tax dollars, so there's not a local say in this project. It's all up to GDOT. If you want this project moved up, you can contact the GDOT Planning Division. If you want more transparency overall within the Georgia Department of Transportation, you can contact your state senator or representative. It's up to the Georgia General Assembly to establish statutory requirements to make sure that the department is being more transparent. Reporting from the Bull River Bridge, Elizabeth Rollins, WTOC News.
Right now, GDOT is wrapping up the second phase of this 5-phase project, which includes the tedious environmental permitting process. The preliminary engineering should be completed within the next year, but the right-of-way is not slated to begin until 2024. And again, as you heard Elizabeth say, construction not scheduled to begin until 2026.